Welcome back to the Vault, and this an episode of Story Time. The Vault doors are about to open and take us on another adventure taken from our archives. This time we go to 1951 and the country of Austria, where a very strange and bizarre abduction took place and potentially led to a journey to Mars. This is the story of a bizarre alien abduction in Austria. In May of 1951, an unnamed witness was working for the United States Occupation Army in Austria, and on this evening he was driving home in the vicinity of Salzburg at 11:20 p.m. when he noticed someone step out of the brush by the side of the road. It was so dark that he could only see the figure's outline, but he could see that it was holding a long, thin, pencil-like thing in its hand. The mysterious figure then pointed this device at the witness and made a clicking sound, after which the witness found himself to be completely paralyzed, the car veering off to the side of the road and came to a stop. The figure then approached, and he could see that it was no person, but rather a bizarre entity with a rigid and cylindrical torso, round like a tin can, no neck, a transparent near-spherical helmet, and two-piece suit with tight-fitting legs that merged into its toes. Protruding from its round body were two short little arms that ended in three-fingered hands. Its head was also slightly cylindrical, high, bold, with a white skull extending up and back from a wide heart-shaped face, and set within this face were two large and compound eyes, like those of an insect. Its mouth was a slit, and it had only holes for a nose. A 1967 article by Charles Bowen called Fantasy or Truth, a new look at an old contact claim, says of what happened next. The entity placed a black square plate on the witness's chest and strapped it around his back. He could hear sounds in the distance, but he couldn't hear the entity walking. He must have walked very easily. He could see his outline as he walked around him. After he strapped the plate on him, he walked in front of him and pointed the thing in his hand at the plate on his chest rather than at his head like before. He walked away and pulled the witness after him. He couldn't move or walk, but he just pulled him along after him. He wasn't actually in the air, but his full weight wasn't on the ground. It seemed as if he was light. Behind the brush was a small field. In the field, hidden from the road, was a round object about 150 feet in diameter. It was dark, and he couldn't tell what it was. His first thought was that it was a spy that had captured him for some reason. The entity then did something, either stepped on something or pushed some button, and a door opened and pulled him up into the dark. He was plenty scared, and he wondered what would happen next. Although still in the dark, he could finally feel the floor under his feet. He knew that where he was either glass or plastic, because the stars could be seen shining from up above. Then he saw the outline of what looked like a door, and the entity pulled him through into what he later found was a room of glass or plastic. The stranger kept his finger on the witness, or what he thought was his finger, but later saw that it was some form of pencil-shaped object, pointed at the witness all the time. Then when he was in the room, he took it off of him, and he sank down to the floor. He went out, and the witness could see his outline. There was some sort of shaking sensation, and he knew that the door to the room had shut. The next sensation he had was a sensation of rising up into the air. He had never flown in his life. The witness claimed that he could see the earth fall away through the craft's transparent walls, and that he and the entity flipped over as they reached the zone of gravitational neutrality between the Earth and the Moon. They flew past the Moon so close that he could see the craters very clearly, and then they continued on until they reached another planet, red in colour, which he surmised to be Mars. The witness would later go on to describe this fantastical new place and the series of strange events that would unfold there. In the witness's own words, "I looked out over the land and it looked like paradise. As I went down, I looked over the land, and over one side there were red fields, and on the other side there was what looked like green fields. Some places in the fields were what looked like big chimneys rising from the ground. It was bright daylight, and the sun was shining with no clouds in the sky. We were approaching the red fields, and I could see rivers with blue water in them. The rivers ran straight, and at intervals there were bridges built across them, and I could see roads. The bridges were just like our bridges. From high up I could see no sign of life. Then we glided to a field that was filled with saucers like the one that I was in. There appeared to be hundreds of them. They were of different colours, grey, gold and silver, but there were no black or red ones. The entity stopped the saucer about a quarter of a mile above the other saucers in the field by just simply pulling a lever. We then went straight down until we were about 20 or 30 feet from the ground, and the entity parked the saucer on a high platform. As we went down, I could see the same kind of entities were in the other saucers. When we got to the platform, the entity pulled a lever and the glass slid back and he went outside. The alien pointed the pencil-like thing at my chest, and before I knew it, I was inside one of the other ships, and I remained there for about 10 minutes. I could see that there was another alien on this ship, but it was much smaller than the one that had been piloting my saucer. While I was inside the ship, I looked around at the other saucers, and I could see the same type of entities. Suddenly, quite a way away, I saw two ships that had people from Earth on them. One saucer was sort of dirty looking, and there was one man, one woman and two kids in it. In another saucer nearby that was kind of golden, I saw one man and one woman. I was going to wave at them, but I felt scared. I was waiting for them to wave, but they didn't wave. After I saw them, I thought I would have to stay there with them now. Way off in the distance by the river, I could see things moving. They were dark, but I couldn't tell what they were. Down on the ground, I could see large red flowers growing. They looked something like sunflowers. There were some green patches between them, but they were flowers as far as the eye could see. On the ground, I could see patches too, and it was just the same as Earth and the grass that we find on Earth. I started thinking that I must be on Mars. Then the driver, or the entity that was flying the saucer, came back from another ship. He got back inside and closed the door again. After these events, they flew off again, and after some time approached Earth and the Moon once again, coming in so fast that the witness thought that they were going to crash. But they smoothly and gently entered the atmosphere and made their way to the place where the witness had been picked up. The entity then pulled him towards his car and the witness feared at this time that the thing was going to kill him. However, it put him back into his car, removed the plate that it had put on his chest, and departed in its ship. At no point did the creature make any attempt to communicate with the witness, so we are left to wonder just what all of this was about, and indeed whether any of it even happened at all. It is interesting to note that the witness claimed to have been brought to Mars, and considering that this was 1951, at a time when our knowledge of the red planet was crude at best, there were some that had an idea at the time that it might have had a civilization living there, and that it might have had rivers and forests and be inhabitable by aliens. But here's a thought. What if it wasn't Mars? What if the witness just thought they had gone to Mars? Let us know what you think in comments of this bizarre abduction story. Thanks for watching, and tune in next time for another episode of Storytime. Stay safe.